Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education meeting. We're going to be switching some of the order of our meeting around tonight. And I just want to say we have a late start today. And just to explain why, we had asked SEPTA, our special education PTA, if we could use a date that they had set for last week for their general meeting. They very graciously said yes so that we could have our community forum because we were having a lot of trouble finding a date. They then rescheduled their general meeting for tonight, and we had to reschedule our meeting from last night because of a tragedy that happened to one of our families here. So we rescheduled for tonight, and we certainly didn't want to bump SEPTA again, and so we remain grateful to SEPTA for rescheduling their meeting. So we scheduled this for late in the day. I also want to add one more thing. Looking around the table, you'll see that we have one of our members-elect sitting with us, Lauren Berman. Our board policies allow us to do that, and it's a nice way to introduce a board member. Jeremy Arnon was also invited, and he actually planned to come last night. But when we rescheduled, he unfortunately was not available tonight. We're going to be moving a few things around. Also, one is item C under business. We have an executive session that we thought we would have finished, but we didn't, so we're going to be moving that to the end of our meeting.
Go into executive session. Go
into executive session just after the second public comment, and then return for public discussion on that item. And we're also going to move up our presentation from Jesse Merchant to be the first thing because we understand that it's late and we appreciate you all being here. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Jesse Merchant.
So much pressure. I wasn't ready yet.
I didn't give you a heads up on that, did I?
Well, thank you guys. And I would have said hello before. I didn't realize that I'm Jesse Merchant. I'm the athletic director. Welcome and good luck. Tonight is a little bit different. If you've been here during the winter or fall, we really had some time to spend kind of going through each team, talking about some of the successes, some of the hardships, and really what it means to be a student athlete. If you've been around sports long enough, or at least interscholastic sports, you realize that there aren't 3 seasons of sports, right? It's not the fall, winter, and the spring. It's really the fall, winter, the spring, and awards season. I kind of feel like it's like on par with, the Oscars or something like that. We get to this time of year, and it's really a wonderful thing, right? We have senior awards dinner tomorrow night, graduation obviously on Thursday. And sometimes, because so much is packed here into May and June, things can get a little hectic. So I apologize to the athletes. I could talk about you guys all day. I can certainly talk about sports all day. What we're going to try to do today is kind of tackle our spring season in just one kind of snapshot, right? All those successes and all that hard work, the dedication, the commitment by you guys and, of course, your parents, right? Getting you to practice or forcing you to stay there or, helping you out on Saturdays and Sundays, making sure that you stuck with modified or JV to get to this point. Really, we just had so many award winners that I'm going to read through some of them. I could never get to every single award that our student athletes received during this past fall season because we have so much of our student population actually participating in stuff, right? Different levels, junior varsity or varsity. Teams who are really starting to, no pun intended, hit our stride now that we have our track and field facilities. Our team is getting larger, growing by the day. Some of the sports that we've offered and have been successful for a long time had some of those same successes this year. We had 2 league championships, one in golf and another in softball. And the good news about both of those programs is that many of those players are actually quite young. We have a few graduating seniors who are not with us tonight. They'll be getting their all-league plaques tomorrow night. But that really speaks to the future of some of those programs as well. So if you wouldn't mind, what I'd like to do is to just kind of make it official. I'd like to go through some of the award winners that we have for this season. And then the few of you that are here, I'd like to invite you, after I'm done reading out the names, to just kind of come up with me, give your parents an opportunity to take your picture, but also give our Board of Education the opportunity to thank you personally and kind of give you a round of applause. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So again, we go back. We had a number of our athletes recognized by the Enterprise for kind of the all-enterprise team. So if you hadn't seen the Enterprise recently, go back and take a look at that. Almost every single one of our sports had multiple players on that. Some of our teams, there were 6 boys lacrosse players, 5 softball players that all made those enterprise teams. So for all league, basically is the best players from every single league. So each sport has a slightly different league, but our all-league honorable mention students are Gaetano Hayes for boys lacrosse and Jesse Nyman for baseball. This one's going to be the longest. Our all-league recipients, which everyone in here is, and actually some other awards as well, are those students that have been recognized by the coaches and players throughout their whole league as the best in that league. So, as we go through the list, for baseball, we have Mike Limatone, Brian Dosen, Alex Weitzman, Blaze Rohan, Justin Caraballo, and Emmett Fuchs. For golf, like I said before, league championship golf team, Daniel Osband, Danny Letty, Franco Fugel, who's our senior, Franco. In softball, also league champions, Katie Staniford, Alexandra Civitano, Zoe Fields, Marley Edwards, and Alexa Brink. In track and field, Elena Schmidt, who couldn't be here tonight, Caitlin Guilfoyle, who's here with us. For girls lacrosse, Rebecca Litsky, Alexandra Chomiak, and Samantha Gabay, as well as Becca Litsky. For boys tennis, we have Thomas Kovac, Elliot. Elliot's also an all-league recipient. Armand Kapadia, Silas McAllister Spooner. And for boys lacrosse, actually probably the most all-league recipients, is Brandon Beezer, Frank Carosa, Kyle Ryan, Chance Vavra, Matt Shin, Sebastian Sosha, and Matt Henline. There's a lot of students representing these all-league recipients. Now, even beyond that, from an all-section standpoint, this is all of the 70 or 80 schools in Section 1. We have a few all-section honorable mentions. One of them are here with us tonight. Brandon Beezer for boys lacrosse, Michael Limatone for baseball, Samantha Gabay for girls lacrosse, and Katie Standiford for softball. Again, Michael being a junior, all right, was the only non-senior to be an all-league, all-section honorable mention. So, and our final, really our all-section, the only all-section athlete that we had this season was Alex Civitano, who was recognized, if you had paid any attention to the Journal News, she really was a versatile pitcher and infielder for our softball team. They were beating the #1 seed Rhinebeck to like the 6th inning until, unfortunately, Rhinebeck, who is a perennial powerhouse in softball, came back. So we wish her luck in the future, right? And we expect all of our athletes to work hard in the off season and come back with that same intensity and the same hard work and commitment that they exhibited this year. So if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is just invite the few of you that are here. All right, this is the most embarrassing part. Come on, Caitlin. Come on, Daniel. Come on, guys. Give them a chance to get a picture. All right? I promise I won't ruin them all.
Elliot,
Get up there.
What sport does Jackie's son play? What sport does Jackie's son play?
whatever's nice. She's doing
And can we just get a quick once again to the students and their parents, thank you so much for coming tonight. I know how crazy it's been at this time of year. And also to you guys for giving me the chance to do this. This is like my favorite part of the job. So, all right, thank you again, guys.
Thank you, Jesse.
And I'll just say on behalf of the board, kids, it's terrific. You know, I've seen through my own children what being on a team can do and playing sports. It's amazing. It takes so much time and effort and commitment, and you don't get to start your homework till 9 at night, and you're up till late. So kudos to you. Kudos to your parents, because you couldn't do it without them. Kudos to your coaches. And a huge thank you from the board to Jesse for everything you've done with this job this year. So with that, we're going to move on to the next part of our meeting, and while I know we have really interesting meetings, if you guys don't want to stay, please feel free. So why don't we take a minute in case anybody just wants to...
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations. And enjoy the summer.
Yes, thank you.
And work very hard to be even better next year. Especially. All right?
Thank you, Jesse.
All sections.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
I think we're into it.
Okay, moving forward, we're going to go to our report from our superintendent.
Thank you. So quickly, just a few items on the calendar for this week. We have 8th grade career day tomorrow, in addition to the high school senior awards night. So we're excited about those two events. And high school graduation is happening on Thursday in the evening at 6 p.m. And Thursday also is our last day of school for students, and Friday is our last day of work for staff. School, it's not really school, but, so they're here on Friday. So we are excited about the closing out of the school year. Quickly, just share some highlights with you. I have a few slides. Thank you to Janine for preparing these highlights every month for us and every board meeting. So first and foremost, we had our second graders visit the Harvest on Hudson restaurant here in our community. So 132 of our second graders visited the restaurant on its 20th anniversary to learn about the whole garden to table experience. They planted their own tomato plants and were given a pizza making demonstration by the chef, by David. So that's pretty cool. They had a great time there. And a couple of our kids are in that picture. You can't really see them, but they were there. And I'm not quite sure who everyone in the background is, but those are our kids.
It's on the website, too.
Yes, thank you. We also are excited to find out that two of our staff members, Ross Abrams and Chris Keogh, will be presenting at the Reimagining Education Conference being held at TC on July 19th. They'll be discussing the development and impact of the Courageous Conversations classes, which were created, say again?
Oh, July 19th.
July 19th, sorry, not June. They were created by three of our staff members, Erica Finnegan, Janice Mateo Toledo, and Sonia Cherry Paul. So we're excited to be sharing that work. And that'll be happening at Teachers College here locally.
Tony, I just want to suggest, I think I mentioned this before, but the next time that NYSBA is taking suggestions for presentations at the next NYSBA conference, they should really...
They did actually submit, I know for sure, to a couple of other places.
Yeah.
We just haven't heard it back yet, I think.
I think NYSBA's deadline
had passed.
Had already passed, but maybe for the following year, because I'm sure it's something that other school districts would love to hear about.
Absolutely, thank you. We also had our science research students at the Westlake Science Fair, and so here are some of the results. So we have in animal science, first place we have David and Christian, and in second place we have Eva. In behavioral science we have Molly, she took second place. In cell and molecular biology, we have first place Anya. In chemistry, we have Jonah, who took third place. In engineering, in first place we had Grace, and in second place we had Matthew. In environmental science, we had Wiley in second place, along with Owen. In medicine and health, we had Jairu in second place, and Hannah in second place, as well as Max and Rafaela in second place. And then finally, in physics, we had Emma in second place. So it's pretty impressive. The results are pretty impressive. Not only the first place positions, but second and third place, really challenging spot to land in, and really speaks to their skill set and their research, and our team here in-house as well, supporting them over the years. So congratulations to all our student researchers. Again, as a reminder, we have our graduation on June 21st. That's tomorrow, Thursday, 2 days from now, at 6 o'clock on the Burke Estate. And finally, I think our reorg meeting is scheduled for July 9th at 7:30 p.m. So that is the next Board of Education meeting. And that's what I have for you guys.
Okay, student report, or it's the end of the year?
I don't know if you discussed. I don't know if you discussed the graduation speaker. Is that a topic of conversation?
No, feel free.
I'm not exactly sure, but apparently she's really interesting. Used to work at NBC, and there's a article in the next Buzzer issue about her. So cool.
An article where?
In the next Buzzer issue about her.
Is she a Hastings High School graduate?
Yes. Worked for a lot of media companies. She's a really interesting person.
Cool.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Congratulations on finishing your school
So
year.
I want to just say one thing, which is that I'm not quite sure how it happened this year, but we never had meetings. The student board liaison group never met. The board members never met with the student government people. We used to meet every 6 weeks, every 2 months, like on a Friday morning usually. I'm just putting it out there, and we'll bring it up with Mr. A for next year, that it was something that for some reason we were never able to get off the ground this year, and I think it's important.
SU members?
Pardon me?
Yeah. SU meetings?
SU
Yeah.
members,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah, it used to be like 3-4 times a year on a Friday morning before school that, and Jody and I were actually supposed to be the reps, but we never heard from the high school office that any meetings had been
Right.
scheduled.
Okay.
So next year, I think we'll try to get it going again, because it's important.
Yeah, I'll talk to Ms. Coker about that. Also, the next, the sophomore that's going to be the board liaison is Clay Haddock, which is Parker's brother, and I can assure there was no nepotism involved. It's just kidding.
And Elliot, I think also maybe what we'll do over the summer or the very beginning of the year is talk to you and Parker's brother about how to make the experience, as meaningful as possible.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
That's all we have.
Okay, so I think that's it. Before we move forward into public comment, we also are going to be saying some goodbyes tonight to our long-serving board member, Donna Lang, as well as Eileen Bacher. And do you want me to announce?
Yeah, I'm absolutely, I'll go ahead and do it myself.
Sure.
I am stepping down from the Board of Education effective June 30th. I actually wrote something. I'm just going to read it because I'd rather do that than ad-lib. So this will sort of explain why. I was elected last year. It's a 3-year term, so I'll be stepping down before my term is up. So, okay, here's why. My family and I are in the process of selling our home. We're moving out of Hastings. Thus, I'm resigning from my position as a trustee on the Hastings Board of Education. To say that this has been a difficult decision would be a very much gross understatement. 3 generations of Mitchells and DeChicos, that's my maiden name, have lived in Hastings. Our decision to move has been a family one. My husband, Tommy, and children, Katie and David, agree that it is in the best interest of our family. We are collectively sad, but we are strongly united. The dichotomy is that this has been one of the most difficult decisions and one of the easiest decisions at the same time. We wish you well. I wish you well. We have faith in the Hastings community and its spirit to grow and thrive. For those of you who voted for me last year, I thank you for the opportunity to serve as a trustee on the Hastings Board of Education. I hope I've represented you well. Please know that I gave it my all at all times. Thank you.
And I just want to say, and I'll speak for the board, that we are so sorry to lose you on every level. We're so sorry that circumstances require that you leave Hastings, and we're hoping that maybe it's just a short stint and that Hastings will be lucky enough to have you and your family back. And just to say a few words, you've only served a year on the board, although you were here for the year before learning. We saw you sitting there next to Mia, and you have brought so much to this board. I mean, I'll speak first about special education, but it's not limited, but you have brought, you've just given us all such a deeper knowledge of what's involved. You have taught us that special education is not its own silo over here, that special education and general education are part of the same being, and that if we don't start to look at it that way, that we are going to hurt ourselves. You have taught us details. You've helped us understand the mechanics. You've shared experiences with us, and we just, it was a voice that needed to be on the board. You've shared your insights as a teacher in the river towns, which is really helpful for us to know, in addition to everything else you've opined on. But the uniqueness of your voice, the intellect, the passion, the devotion. You are one of the busiest people I know, and you are here for us whenever we need. You're here when you're required. You're here when you're not. So just on behalf of the board, you have our deepest gratitude. I'm actually going to turn this over to Jody, because I know we have other people who are leaving, and a lot of gratitude and sadness.
It's sort of hard to follow that. And I want to wish you the best and your family, Christina. I second what Lisa said, and we'll miss having David at rec basketball. So I wanted just to say a few words about Eileen and Donna, and I really wasn't going to cry, and I'm really going to try hard not to cry. I'm going to say first, you can cry, Donna. I'm going to first just speak a little bit about Eileen, who isn't here tonight. And, you know, I've been struggling to think about how to honor and recognize Eileen for the years of service that she's given to the district. Eileen was first elected to the Board of Ed in 2006, which sounds like, I don't know, 2 centuries ago or something. And she has been one of the hardest working board members that I've ever come across in my years of being in the district, of sitting in the audience when my own children were at Hillside, when Marilyn Wishney would say to me, "Why don't you run for the Board of Ed?" She was the principal at Hillside. And I said, "I'd never run for the Board of Ed. I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll never run for the Board of Ed." And I would still come to meetings. And so Eileen has been here for a long time. It's over 12 years. And she was originally, about 7 years ago, Gab Lesser was elected as the president and couldn't continue in her role. And about a year later, Eileen stepped up, and she was the vice president. She moved seamlessly in, and then for about 7+ years, Eileen, until Lisa took over, Eileen was the president of the board. And her hard work and her dedication were unbelievable. We went through some very difficult times. We went through difficult financial times. We went through difficult times with the bond for Reynolds Field. We hired several superintendents, interim superintendents, and there was a lot of work that she oversaw, and she really, I think, very quickly grew into the position and just took it on hook, line, and sinker, and but always was mindful and respectful of what the job was and what she should be doing and how to do that. And in that process, she developed relationships with lots of different places in the community. And when I think about Eileen, it's sort of hard to come up with the right, I really can't come up with the right words to kind of thank her and show appreciation, but I'm so struck by how I think I always relied on her as such incredible institutional memory. I mean, her knowledge of the working of the district, of every piece from A to Z, both historically, in the present, policy, legal. It's hard for me to imagine not having her sitting here just to say, "Can you remember this?" or "What happened then?" And she just knew it all. And she kind of just kept things moving. And even at times that it got emotional for her, or she was upset, she would try her hardest to kind of stay on an even keel. And there were plenty of emotional, difficult times. At the same time, I think she took us through a lot of really exciting, wonderful changes in the district. And I think we have her to thank for many years of while there were always things that needed to happen, things that weren't ideal, things that needed to change, I think she would acknowledge all of that, but there were also many ways in which we just kept the district moving forward. I know it was going to be hard for her to be here tonight at a last meeting. I think she will be here on Thursday night at graduation. But I just think it's really sad. I understand. It's hard for me to ever say goodbye to anything or anybody. It's really sad to think when I first heard that she was putting her house on the market and would be moving, you just sort of want to believe that some people are here forever, especially I don't think she has quite the depth of history in the district, of family roots, but she certainly has lots of family in this district and in the community, in the river towns. It was hard to imagine her presence not here. I know we'll move on in a positive way. I know we've all learned from her, and we can grow, and I'm sure we can tap back into her institutional memory when we need to. But I think the district did very well. For the most part, the district did very well by Eileen, and I think whether we agreed with her, didn't agree with her, I think we could agree that she gave it 150% while she was doing her thing. So just want to thank her. And now I also want to say some words about Donna, who also will be leaving. Donna has also served on the board for 10 years, right? Donna and I were served on the PTSA board for many years before we both decided to run for the Board of Ed. We were both on the executive board of the PTSA, so we had worked together prior to this. And in that role, Donna was always the incredible numbers person. She was the treasurer, and she just also had a wealth of knowledge about everything to do about finances. It was sort of remarkable. And you just knew that everything was being taken care of and managed. But since you've been on the board, you've been an incredible member of this team, of the various teams. And when I think about you, there are a couple of things that really stand out in my mind. I certainly can't think about you without thinking about policy and the policy committee. You are, it is your middle name, and you are. It is a relief as a board member to know that one could rely on you to either know what the policy is, and know the history of the policy, but if you didn't know it, you would find out immediately. And you just have this breadth of knowledge about the workings of the district in terms of policy, and in terms of, I'm thinking tonight when you talked about NISBA, you were the person who was always, or you and Wendy were always so connected to NISBA and to going to conferences and to bringing all of that back to all of us who were either too busy or too lazy or too whatever to be able to go. We knew that we could rely on you, and you would go, and you loved it, and so it was great because then we could benefit. But your knowledge of policy is amazing, and I think we're going to have to work really hard and try not to call you on a regular basis to kind of help us think through and clean up our act, although you got us through a lot of policy and policy cleaning up of policies over the years. And the other thing is that you've always been, you've served on many committees and in many ways, but the other thing that I always think about is your devotion and dedication to the arts. And you've always been part of the arts committee as part of the board, but it's a part of the district that you've always been sort of both personally, whether it's through your children or your own personal interest, you've always been a real patron of the arts, and you've always been devoted to all of the different pieces of the arts in Hastings and really a spokesperson for that. And I think we all know that one of the things that I love, but I think that we love about this town is that this is the town where you can have sports and you can have arts and you can have other interests, and you can do academic challenge or Model UN, but you could be one person, one student, and have the experience of all these things. And we know that one of the things that Hastings values enormously are the arts. And I always think that you have been this devoted spokesperson, and that you would always make sure you could go to the meetings that were being held. It was a top priority for you. And I think it's something that we have to be mindful of as we move forward, and as we face challenges going forward, fiscal things. Things like that are always easy to kind of think we're going to pare away at. And it's really such a vital part of the education that we give to our children. And it reminds me of one more thing. You have, I always can hear you talk about public education and your devotion to public education and what it means in this country, that we have a system of public education and what it should be providing and what the role is, and the notion that people pay taxes, and part of what we pay taxes for is to support education, and part of why people stay in a district even after their children leave is because it's part of life. It's part of the life cycle of what one does, that we benefited, our children benefit, and then you want the next generation. You have always been such a proponent for that and a spokesperson at key times. And I think your voice is going to be, and wisdom, going to be really missed. And I know you'll let us give you a call and pick your brain as we go forward. But I just want to thank you for being an incredible team player, that you were someone who would always step up if somebody was needed to go to a meeting or somebody was needed to do something, no matter how busy you were or what other family things you had to deal with, you would somehow make it a priority to be there and to do that. And you were a true team player as a board member and on behalf of the district. So, thank you.
And we also have,
Thank you, dear.
and we also have this nice certificate for you, and we have one for Eileen, and we're going to get one for you because when we ordered them, we didn't know you were leaving. So,
Thank you, Lisa.
thank you. Who's going to second all our motions?
Or know when we should be seconding motions.
Well, thank you, Jody. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody. It's been 10 really good years, on top of, I think it was 12 years as the PTSA treasurer. And this school district means a lot to me, and the people here mean a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna, from all of us. Okay. Moving on, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Hello, my name is Mia Johnson. I'm a resident of Hastings. I want to publicly thank Christina Mitchell for her service to our district in general and to special education families in particular. Christina, you are a person of the highest integrity. I so value your judgment, your poise, your tenacity, your fire, your determination. You and your voice are going to be greatly missed in this district. And while your time on the board was shorter than we had hoped, everything that you helped to accomplish this year in terms of the progress we've made in special education will be long-lasting, and you should know that. And your impact will far outlast your stay on the board. I just want to thank you and tell you that you inspire me every day, and I am so grateful to call you my friend and my former stepsister, but always my stepsister at heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
I didn't realize that was going to happen today. I think I have to speak. Rob McQueen, I live in the district, and I was Christina's partner last year, so I just wanted to say I'm so glad you made it, and even for a year, and that you brought what you brought to the board. As my kids' friend's mother, as my friend, and as somebody that I also look up to and who inspires me. And I think we have to make a commitment that this does not go without paying it forward. That we as a district truly try to put the time and effort and knowledge and money and just thoughtfulness into making sure that you and others like you never have to do this again, because 3 generations of living here and having to leave because the public education system's not able to give you what you need really makes me sad and guts me a bit. But we wish you luck, and know that David and Katie will do great with you and Tommy as parents. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Is there any more public comment? Okay, so we're just going to move now into our business items. So we have under A, we have 13 business items. Is everyone okay taking them as a consent agenda, or did anybody want to pull anything out? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt the 13 items under business A?
So moved.
Donna, may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Section B, placement for CSE and CPSE. May I have a motion to adopt those recommendations?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? The next section is the section that we're moving. So we're going to jump ahead to personnel. We have 3 items. Tony, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about these or not?
Sure. I mean, the first couple are scheduled to be in something for a summer program, but we are excited to recommend to the Board of Education tonight Ms. Julianne Snyder for position of full-time guidance counselor, school guidance counselor at Hillside. And while Julianne was with us this year, she was here as a .2. She did go through an interview process for this full-time position and was recommended to me along with another finalist, and just really did an outstanding job. It was one of the, like, to have that time with her in an interview was a really wonderful opportunity for me to get a sense of who she was, to get a sense of her skill set, her passion for supporting students and parents, and then reflecting back on how positive the community was about her impact, knowing that she was only here for a .2 this year. It all sort of came together. So it's really exciting to be able to recommend her for this position that is growing from .2 to a 1.0. And we thank the board for being supportive of that. And thank I mean, from our kids to our parents to our staff. They are so excited to see this position grow. So thank you. So that's the only recommendation aside from the other 2, but that's a full-time position. And Julianne knows that she'll be invited at the end of August, where we're inviting all the new appointees. So.
Okay, and I am actually going to ask to pull that appointment out of the consent agenda, and I did give Tony and Doug a heads up on this. For the first time this year, I've supported every recommendation that you've given us 100%, but this one, as I've stated before in finance meetings, I have concerns about where we're placing our resources in terms of school counselors, and I think I had shared these data points before. I support increasing the position at Hillside, but not to a full 1.0. And the reason is I think we have some need for this at our secondary level. We learned back in the winter, Laura Sullivan shared some very troubling numbers about the secondary level, that she monitored visits to the nurse over 1 month, and literally over 500 children, or 500 visits were made because of mental health related reasons at the secondary level, which really, to me, read as crisis. And at the same time, I did, as I do, I always look to see what our neighbors are doing, and I saw that our guidance staff at Farragut, in my opinion, the data shows that we have the lowest level of staffing of the river towns at the middle school level. So, for example, the Hastings ratio is 260 students per guidance counselor. In Dobbs, it's only 171 per counselor. In Ardsley, it's only 167. And in Irvington, it's only 203. So while I support growing the position at Hillside, I think we have very, very immediate needs at the secondary level. I will say that is not particular to Hastings. It's happening everywhere. Stress is on the rise, and it tends to manifest worse and worse. We even heard our principals say it's it's hard to get bed space at treatment facilities. So for that reason, I will be asking to pull that out of the consent agenda.
Lisa, I just have, actually, it's more of a question for Tony, but we're not voting on whether or not to have the position. It's the administration that has chosen how they're spending that money in the budget. We're just voting on whether or not this is the right person for the position, correct?
I am recommending Julianne Snyder for the position.
For the position. So this isn't a referendum on whether or not we should have the position. There's already, the position's been decided by the administration that they're doing that, and we're just deciding whether we want to approve this person in that position.
No, I get that, but it's my way of showing that I have an issue with the position. So that's why, I'm just explaining why I'm pulling it. So with that, let's go ahead, and may I have a motion to approve items 1 and 2 under A, and are we also including under amendments? Are we including that as well?
I didn't, no, I didn't.
Okay, so,
but
so may I have a motion
And I can
to
explain
approve
to you.
items 1 and 2 under personnel?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and may I have a motion to approve item 3 under A?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, Tony, did you want to speak about Section B amendments?
It's just a minor thing that Ms. Bellis, who you have already appointed as our new middle school guidance counselor, who is filling in for Sue Horowitz. She's replacing Sue Horowitz. We received information about credits that she had earned, and we wanted to make sure she was compensated appropriately. And she had submitted everything she needed. So it's just a minor change to where she sits on a salary scale. That's it.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve item 1 under Section B under personnel?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, approval of our minutes from the June 4th meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Donna,
I usually say so moved. I don't know why Lisa thinks I always second.
I'm sorry. And did we get a second?
Yes, somebody did.
All in favor? Okay. By the way, did it just get very hot in here? Do we have an air conditioner?
Well, the windows got
Windows are
open.
okay. Okay, committee reports. Finance Committee. Who would like to report out on that for us?
I mean, I'm happy to do so. We did meet last week.
Met last week,
Sure.
focuses on contracts.
We talked about contracts. We also had a couple of conversations related to staffing. And we brought Maureen and I brought the board up to speed as it relates to 2 particular things that we want to be monitored, and I know you were there for that, Tim. So one of the things we talked about was kindergarten. We have sort of boomed in our incoming kindergarten registration, which we were not at about 6 weeks ago. So we have 110 students. So the recommendation... And we know about 110 that have had packets and what have you, and then there's another group of kids. So the recommendation made at the Finance Committee was that we create an additional kindergarten section, that we don't wait until late August to do so. And so that was one of the recommendations that was approved and discussed at the Finance Committee meeting last week. So we will be creating a 6th section of kindergarten for the fall, which means in terms of staffing, that our current kindergarten staff will stay intact, yes. So.
I would say it wasn't necessarily as much a recommendation. Is that what the board, like what is the number the board feels comfortable splitting at? Because whether it was 115 or 110, it would have impacted this decision.
Can I ask, what are our kindergarten, I mean, you don't have to know this off the top of your head. What are our average class sizes right now in kindergarten this year?
18.
Is it 18?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, it's about 18, exactly.
Because
This year is lower than the last
Right.
couple
Well,
of years.
just
Yeah, I guess, what's a historical, like, I don't expect anybody to...
I would say anywhere from probably 19 to 22.
Okay, so at 110, we'd be at 22 with 5
Yes.
classes. And we have 4 on the horizon? Is that
But
what
that's, again, and again, this is...
we are higher
Yes.
than we were a year ago. When I started a
Right.
year ago around this time, we only had about 99, and we got
Yes, that
about
was-
another 10
right.
kids. So to be at 110 at this point, I think to be proactive as
Well,
additional-
I think it's multiple pieces. One of the reasons it was discussed was also it has an impact in the middle school and their hiring.
Right.
So this individual who we RIF'd, a reduction in force, this staff member, she would be slated at this point, she was slated to teach 6th grade ELA.
Right.
The concern was if, in fact, they went forward with that plan and had this person involved in curriculum development, and there was some concern about what she needed to get up to speed with, and then, in fact, if we were to split back to kindergarten, then the recommendation, the thought was that she would go back to kindergarten because she was a kindergarten teacher, so that has a ripple effect on the middle school. So I think the reason we brought this to the board is if the number, like, is, if it didn't matter whether the number was 23 or 24, we won't break the section. If the idea is that you want to keep the class sizes below a certain rate at Hillside, which has kind of been back, there's no official number, as we know. The contract allows for us to have higher numbers, but the last couple of years, the board has made recommendations to
Keep the numbers.
to keep the numbers at a certain rate, like we did last year in the current 3rd grade, and like we did in the kindergarten. So I guess we're trying just to help our principals figure out their staffing, so I think that's why, based upon, like Tony said, the number this year is higher than it was last year.
At this
by
point.
by like 9 or 10 students.
Question for you, because I know we're also having an issue about space
Yes.
at Hillside. So I just did some quick math, if I did it right. If we wait till we get 115, that's still only,
It would be the 116th student that you would usually, like, you wouldn't break at 115, you break at 116.
I guess the question is there a harm in waiting? Because we do have this competing space issue going on. It's a financial issue. Is there
I think
a harm in
it's
waiting?
only the impact it has on the middle school staffing, Tony, is that correct? Would you say?
I would
There's
say
a-
that it has impact on the elementary school as well.
Yeah.
I think you as a district, and not the board, the district has traditionally split kindergarten at 111. So while you're talking about 115,
Right.
which is another number, clearly it's another number, but it's a number that's been used in other grade levels. Sorry, this is a number that we've talked about. And in fact, if you look back at our conversations at other meetings earlier this year, we have looked at kindergarten differently. I think it's come up in conversation. So I think while there are implications for both the middle school and the elementary school as it relates to their staffing, I'm pulling back, I'm looking at a data that was shared with all of you earlier this year regarding class size, and kindergarten has been, aside from an anomaly, which seems to be an anomaly based on what I'm seeing from 2 years ago, about 18. So in 2016-17, there was sections of 22, and I think they split into 6 when they went to 1st grade.
Yes, that's correct.
But looking back, it's 18-18, looking 18-19-20. So that was where the recommendation came in. Again, recognizing where we are sitting today, it is June 19th, or 19th, and we have about 110 kids already in the system. This time last year, we had about 99, and so just knowing what the
Does
trend
every class have an assistant, in kindergarten, have an assistant teacher?
Teacher aid.
And did we
Teacher aide.
keep full-time? Because I know we
Yes,
talked
we
about
did. Right
we
now,
have
they're in
full-time
time.
teacher aide and full-time teacher.
Okay.
And I think is it one ICT class in the kindergarten? Okay.
I feel like we have to discuss this in terms of space as well at the same time.
I think we talked about this the
That's
last.
why, if anyone refers to the agenda on the finance committee, because actually, the contracts were part of the executive session. That's kind of why we brought it, because
Yeah.
as you see today, there is an issue with there's a space issue happening at Hillside. All these things have like far-reaching implications, so I think, and then also like there's a lot of pieces, so I think it was just trying to be proactive as opposed to reactive, because we found ourselves at a really bad place this year with
But
space.
on average, how many people show up between now and the first day of school? What, probably more than 6.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, we can't guarantee it, but it's a
But, yeah.
It's
possibility.
an average at least 10 in the
yeah,
last-
no.
over the
At
last,
least
like,
10 show up
between
Between
like
now
at the
now-ish.
beginning of school that we don't know of now.
Yes.
But
Exactly.
I don't want to be tied to that, because
No,
it's
no.
random, you know what I mean,
Trends.
every year.
Yeah, you could have a dip.
Trying to
for
make it
sure.
educated.
Lisa, at the finance committee meeting, I know you had left before we were having this conversation, but we were talking about sort of all those moving pieces, the space issues, the class sizes and everything, and we sort of kind of talked through the whole thing and felt that this was because the other thing is if you wait and do it last minute, then you're also, scrambling in terms of staffing everything.
Do we think, and again, I'm maybe merging
Right.
meetings, is there, I know we have an issue now about Spanish at
Yes.
Hillside. and what's going to happen to the classroom. And there is a policy level going on there. Once you stick something on a cart, you are sending a message about where this rates in the things you value. Do we think we have a classroom to keep the Spanish program in?
No, and part of it is because
But I think those are separate.
Well, no, it was related. This was actually on the Finance Committee agenda, and that's, I mean, I know that night it got late, and these are important topics, and that's why, I put them all on the agenda, because we did have a major space issue this year. We're going to continue to have one next year. We have a resource room and a special class added to Hillside next year that require classroom space. So we have to take an existing classroom and split it in half. Then if we split the kindergarten or first grade, we are down a classroom. We actually are also, was it the psychologist, what was it, Tony, part of it, one of the district psychologists that is being hired as part of the budget this year, that will be having offices in all the buildings. We have to find a space for them. The FLES.
Are one psychologist going to have an office at every building?
No. I mean, they're splitting space, but I'm just saying there was a lot of, I had like the map to kind of go over tonight if we had time, because it was brought up today, and that was kind of the reason everything is, you're right, everything is all connected. They're all connected, and that's where I think this year, as opposed to last year, and even finding place for the instrumental music, we don't have a space for it, that we're looking to like reclaim a closet in Hillside to renovate it to have instrumental music lessons, because this year they're down one music classroom.
Maureen, didn't you recommend,
Yes.
didn't we have a discussion at a facilities meeting like in the fall about taking one of the larger spaces and carving out a classroom or two there? Was it in the cafe, perhaps? I feel like we had a conversation with Joe about possibly
We did
creating
talk
a
about putting a divider that was in
music,
terms of music lessons.
But they do music lessons in the cafe.
They do. So we have two teachers doing music lessons in the cafe. So that is a potential for the music situation. But the room that if they put John Karinian for the instrumental music, that room could only fit 6 to 8 kids anyway. That was one of the spaces we looked at FLES, but because they have like 23 kids on average in a class, a lot of the smaller classrooms that we use for other things cannot be used for FLES.
Let me just say that I actually don't agree with you, Lisa, that putting something on a cart means we don't value it. I think it has to do with one, being flexible and figuring out which subject is easiest to have be mobile. There were periods of time when my children were at Hillside that the music teachers didn't have their own room because we had 7 sections in many of the grades and 6 in others, and it certainly didn't mean that we didn't value the music program. It's just a question of figuring out and everybody sort of pulling together to figure out the best way to handle things, and whether a special subject teacher like a FLES teacher can push in more easily. Oh, I feel like all of a sudden my sound went off.
That's how I felt before.
That's strange. It's a question of, you couldn't put, for example, an art teacher on a cart because they have too many supplies, but a FLES teacher isn't carrying their language with them as a physical
FLES
thing.
was on a cart.
And I do want to add that FLES was on the cart in the past in the district, and I also want to add that there has been a lot of time spent on this discussion of space at Hillside with our director of facilities, with our leadership team at Hillside. Maureen has been actively engaged. We've had parents be part of the conversation. Staff has been part of the conversation. The reality is it is limited. The reality is it's not going to change. Now, class size has changed, certainly. That's a conversation the board can engage in if they want to shift that band or apply the band that is articulated in the contract. That's certainly the case. That's not been the trend in the past. As it relates to this situation, FLES, which is something we do value, that's why we offer it, I think is what the board supports it as well. It was taken into consideration because of its ability to be somewhat flexible.
That's right.
And also, please know that we also consulted, we spoke to the World Language Department Chair. The classroom teacher who's in the position now was spoken to get a sense of what she would need, because it's not just the room, it's also technology that she would like to have access to, because she incorporates a lot of technology. And so we really feel that this is an appropriate way to, make sure our classrooms have the space they need, and that our special education programs that we're adding have the space that they need, while also providing the FLES experience to our kids. So.
And the one, we did kind of mention, I don't know if people remember because it was late, but I did mention that that night that there was a possibility, because we kind of, in having the conversation over world language, we thought that if that kindergarten split, that this was
That's what we're doing.
FLES. Like, I kind of explained that night that they weren't
I
contributing.
do just want to clarify one
Sure.
thing, that
Yep.
that the head of our department, I mean, while she was consulted, she's very concerned, and I'll just read the language
Yes,
that she
no,
sent to
she's-
all of us. She said, this is the head of the World Language Department,
Yes.
I am extremely concerned with the option of putting it into a cart, as this would totally change the nature of our early language program, which allows students to enter a space designed for language and cultural immersion with many artifacts and props that would be difficult to transport. In my opinion, it is also unwise to make such a drastic change while our tenured FLES teacher, who helped design our current curriculum, is still on maternity leave. Just a question. Our ENL children, I remember there was an issue with where they were going to be taught, and I just don't want to be taking... Is that in a classroom now, ENL?
They
Where
have
does
a
that?
space.
They do.
Where is it in? Because there was
let me
an
look.
issue where it was in the hallway at one
It's
point.
not in the hallway.
No,
It's
and it
never
was,
been in
and
the
that
hallway.
was moved, that they did find a space.
Because I just want to make sure that we're, again, these are sensitive topics.
No, no,
and I want to
but
make sure they're
those,
treated
I know,
properly.
I remember what you're talking about, and that,
It's in the area where the psychologist, it's by the library. Maureen.
okay.
I know where it is.
Oh, yeah, we see their
I've been
names
in
here,
So
yeah.
it has a dedicated
Yes.
room?
Yes.
Okay.
Lisa, I think Christina's trying to...
I just want to add something. I totally understand the whole idea about, sort of making, language and world language be felt as if it's valued and whatnot. One of the things I do want to say, though, is that I think Hastings does do that. In an ideal world, I think, as a teacher, I know this. In an ideal world, every teacher would have their own class. In an ideal world, you wouldn't be sharing classes. And in an ideal world, somebody wouldn't be on a cart. I think part of the reality is a couple of things. Number one, the fact that Hastings has FLES in elementary school, in my opinion, I think that speaks volumes as to how much value Hastings places on it, because technically it's not part of New York State requirement. There are many, many elementary schools that don't have FLES because New York State doesn't require it, and they're not willing to spend the money on it. So, I would love for a FLES teacher, obviously, to have their own classroom, to have, all of sort of those Spanish words or French words, well, they don't do French, but in any event, I think that's the ideal. And I think that maybe that's what we strive towards as a district moving forward, in terms of looking at facilities and spacing and whatnot. But unfortunately, when you look at, I think, all of the classes as a whole, I think you have to look at, well, what is the New York State requirement? And then what are those classrooms that are needed for students to have as a home? And then if a teacher, whether it's a FLES teacher or another teacher, if they have to go on a cart, what kind of things do they need? Like, well, they need a desk. Right, so like, where would their desk be? And if they could be part of that conversation as to like, where would their home base be? And if there's a computer at that desk, and what would be the best kind of cart for them, or whatever it is, to make things in a not ideal world as ideal as possible until maybe a few more things can be fleshed out. I don't know if that makes sense.
They have identified an office for her.
Okay.
Like, she would have an office
And that's a
space,
critical
yeah.
part of it, is that she's on a cart, but she does need a home.
And she has her own
Right.
office.
She can set up, like you said, a computer, but also a file cabinet, so
Right.
she can organize her materials. And one of the reasons we also, and again, this has been discussed and labored over, quite honestly, because we anticipated that.
And even we went over the schedule, like I was telling Tony, we looked at like the schedule. If the music teachers collapse into one room, what would that mean? That means no common planning time for teachers, because all the music teachers have to give, like, they have
Just
to
one
teach at the same time in order. So there's all these like moving pieces that if we were to combine music teachers into one classroom, then the teachers at the grade level lose their common planning time. So we kind of looked at scheduling also, to like from the specials. Yeah, I mean,
there are many
it's
things that were
yeah.
considered. The recommendation does not come lightly, and thank you. I mean, Christina, you articulated exactly the issue. Ideally, everyone would have their own space, their own classroom, and unfortunately, we're in a position right now where the primary responsibility we have is to make sure our classes have classrooms. So, like all our kindergarten classrooms, all our first grade classes, they have to have classes. From there, it becomes, it's not a prioritization, but it's, who needs a space as a, home space, and are there people that could travel if needed, and so in this instance, while we, as I mentioned, we did meet with Nora, and we had a conversation around this, and I think and Maureen and I were there together. I think we expressed to her our disappointment potentially that we wouldn't have a space for FLES for this year. But we looked at,
we looked at a room that she had identified, and we had it checked. It was actually, it's a room downstairs, but just the space under the law, like you can't have more than 10 children in there legally. So they looked at that space. They said, can we do cushions? And we actually did look at it, and even taking down like a wall, because it doesn't even have a window in the room, but we looked at it to see if it could meet the requirement for like safety. Yeah. And even then, she was like, they thought it was a bit tight, but legally we could not put students in there. It's really hard. I think it really ties back into some of the conversations. I mean, there's the class sizes are impacting, and programming are impacting our space. And that's why, as not to say we're going to do it, but one of the items as part of the bond topic has been an extension at Hillside, because I think eventually if you want to keep the class, if there's an expectation to keep class sizes at a certain rate and you end up with six sections and multiple grades, you're going to have an issue. Like now, Amy had said, if like we're trying, I don't even want to think about this, but contingency plan, what if the first grade were to gain more students over the summer like it did 2 years ago? They gained 10, was it 10 or 11 students a few years ago at the first grade level, and they split the section. Right now, if we had to go back to 6 sections at first grade, we would have to find yet another classroom space. And I don't know where that would be.
House to anyone with kindergarten.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, and not that we don't. I mean, we started to talk about a contingency there, and I'm like, I don't need.
So I guess what I'd like to say is that one thing that, I want to thank Tony and Maureen, because the conversation they're engaging in right now is just reinforcing to me, and I think to other board members, at how much thought goes behind decisions by the time that they're recommended to us, and that they're not done half-heartedly or without having thoroughly sort of vetted out what all the alternatives are. And I think as a board, we really appreciate all the work that goes into this, and we realize that what's the game, that parking game where you have to move all the little cars? Rush Hour, yes.
Oh, that's a good game.
It's a great game, but it's a terrible game to play with your elementary school. But I think the point is the point is that by the time I think Tony and Maureen are making this recommendation to us, it's based on an awful lot of thought and discussions with all the parties involved.
I mean, we looked at major construction. We looked at taking, if we went in behind the stage where the custodial offices, like moving offices to then move where the current psychologists are to open up space. There was something that was brought up, taking away a conference room, but then taking part of the library and creating another special conference room, because if they take the conference room for parents to have their CSE meetings, then they have coverage issues, and then parents, we don't want to put them in like this downstairs dingy room. Like, so there's all these, every room was like looked at.
I mean, I think ultimately as a board,
it's really hard.
What's our job is to decide whether our it's not codified in one of our policies, but, there is sort of standing kind of assumptions we've asked our administrators to use in terms of deciding how many kids we're comfortable having in each of the elementary school grades. And as a board, if we want to stick to that, then we're putting them in the position of playing rush hour at the elementary school and figuring out how to fit everything in. And I think they've gone above and beyond in doing this to the best of their ability. If as a board we decide we're happier with larger class sizes that take up therefore fewer classrooms, then they don't have to play rush hour anymore.
And just to thank you, Donna, and just to be clear, the idea here is to try to be proactive, not be reactive in a few weeks or a couple of months, because the implications are far-reaching in that regard. Trying to hire someone on August 25th is a lot harder to do than right now. Thinking about who's going to be teaching 6th grade versus kindergarten is a lot harder to be doing 3 days before school starts. So those things are and not in any we're not coming with any assumptions. To be clear, we were not even going to bring it up. I mean, you can ask Maureen the number of emails I sent with 8,000 questions about what are the number of kids we have, how many kids actually sent in packets, what does this mean, and vice versa. We were communicating about that because we did not want to bring it to you till we were so sure that we were close to a place where.
Because look at what happened last year. They were calling kids from Hillside who had actually come for kindergarten registration, were all registered, and some of them didn't end up coming. So certainly I'm not, you don't want that to happen again, right? But I guess, I think this year was a little bit even more unique about not even hiring a teacher. Right now you have a teacher that they want to move from kindergarten to teach sixth grade ELA, and that's very important to the middle school principal, like with their team and trying to get that person up to speed. So I think there was a concern about, and then when we saw the kindergarten number creeping up, which we all share as administrators, people are like, are we going to split the kindergarten? And then should I hire? Yeah, so there's
quickly.
Whatever.
It was like mid-80s, and then suddenly it was like 90 something, and then before we knew it was like 105, and then it was 110. Like it moved very quickly.
Tony, can I ask you a question? And I don't have an answer in mind. We're working with this number of 18 to 19 in kindergarten, and we do have 2 full-time people there. My question is, because I know you were an elementary school principal for a lot of years, what do you think is like a nice range of class size with that kind of staffing? Not based on our history, but just based on your experience. And again, I don't have a number in mind. I just want to pick your brain.
Well, we talked about this before. I shared with you the class size that I had in my elementary school, but it's not consistent with what the class sizes that are here in the district. So
you've seen both then?
I have, and the research around class size, which is something we've talked about as a board. We talked about this number earlier in the year, and what was communicated back to me was the board is comfortable with where the numbers are now in response to what the community needs. And so what my professional opinion is based on what I've read about research with class size, which we've talked about.
But what does that say?
It's a very gray area. It's not something that's clear-cut in terms of indicators between the number of kids versus performance of students, because the real factor is teacher efficacy. It is not just about class size. So I can give a teacher a class of 20, as an example, you can give, what the research says is you can give a teacher a class of 24, or you can give a teacher a class of 15. But if you don't provide the teacher with the appropriate professional development and necessary support to understand how to maximize a class of 15, the outcome probably wouldn't be much different between a 15 and a 24. So I think it's something that is a broader conversation. It's one that we've engaged in several times this year, particularly last summer as this kindergarten number was creeping up. The message that was communicated to me was we do feel strongly about these numbers. The board feels strongly about this informal band that we've kind of stuck to, and it matters to the community. And at those conversations, I think I did articulate to you all, I had kindergarten classes at Kenny that were 25 kids, 26 kids. And so
with an aide?
With a teacher aide for half the day. So, but again, that's my experience in one place. It was not consistent with what the district has done, and again, doesn't necessarily speak to the research. So I think it's more about what we've done in past practice here in the district, what we've communicated as a priority, what you as a board have communicated as a priority, which I think small class size is something you all have communicated as a priority, and I think that was the jumping off point for Maureen and I when we brought this to you, knowing that this is a priority for you as a board, as reflective of the community that you represent. We want to give you the opportunity to be proactive about it. So if you want to engage if the board wants to engage in a conversation about class size, I don't know that this is the time to do it. We may need to schedule a different meeting, but there are implications, and so that's what I'll say about that. I think the recommendation we're making right now, it's not even a recommendation, it's a conversation we had last week at Finance, right?
It wasn't a recommendation, it was more like, what's the number? I think that was like, because you don't know.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
No, and again, it's the class size is it's great, that's all I can tell you, but it does often come back to teacher efficacy, which is something we take very strongly here, and that's what we do provide PD and such. So yeah. So again, we are at 110 today. if we were, so last year, it was around 99, if I recall correctly, we were sitting
Yeah, I
right
think
now.
so,
Actually,
yeah.
that was July, so almost July. And we had enough kids to create a 6th section of kindergarten 3 days before school started, or 4 days before school started. I think this is an opportunity to be proactive and allow us to staff appropriately, provide an EPT over the summer, because there's a lot of summer curriculum writing that happens as well, and get people in the right places, and best support our teachers and our administrators as well. So again, but if the board wants to engage in a different conversation around class size, I just don't know that this is the appropriate time to do that.
Could I just say one final thing in terms of like moving teachers around and whatnot? As a this is teacher hat again. I know I'm wearing multiple hats, but as a teacher, the absolute last thing you want is to find out the last week of August that you are changing your grade, your course, or whatever it is. As a teacher, it hasn't personally happened to me, but it has happened to colleagues that I've worked with. And it really, not only does it feel like a slap in the face, but you are scrambling all year.
And we're talking K to 6.
All year.
We're not talking like going from K to 1 or K to 2. You're K to, and I'm not saying that one's harder to teach.
You're playing catch up.
You're playing catch up all year because you just don't have that time to physically prepare, to start to get up to speed with the curriculum, to look at what other teachers are doing, to have that just, off the cuff meeting with people to find things out. So the sooner the better.
Well, the summer curriculum work for both grades, they wanted, if this person was teaching 6th grade, they wanted them to work with this group of ELA teachers. So I think, again, this is just coming really from, they're also trying to figure this out with the staffing.
What I will say is, what I think of Maureen and I at this point, and more importantly, Maureen, long term, is that if the number were to dip, so let's say if
You'd go down the
August
following
and suddenly
year.
it's only 100 kids because 10 kids dropped out.
Okay.
They would be brought back to the board. I mean, and that's a reality, and that is also a different risk that we run, right? Where we potentially tell someone they have a different, job or whatever. But I think looking at where we're looking at, and looking at the trends, the number is only bound to go up, not go down. And there are still houses for sale in the community, and so,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah. So that's just reality, But again, we're not making a formal recommendation right now. But if there is concern about what the plan is moving forward.
Right, but based upon the finance committee, I mean, the people that were there were like split the section, and that's kind of the why that we're with the flex classroom and all these kind of different moving pieces. But certainly, if that wasn't the recommendation, we could tell Pete, right? I mean,
it's fine.
I think it's like, to your point, though, it's not first in kindergartens because it's the 6th grade to the kindergarten that is
and it's
problematic.
not something that we can say, all right, she's kindergarten, let's move her to 2nd, then that means we're bumping in 2nd grade. You can't do that either. I mean, I don't think it's a good move, and I don't think it pays our teachers the professional respect that they very much deserve. So,
and there is kind of another moving part, but we can't really talk about it right now. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, our conversation last week was reflective of this is the number, the 110. Which, by the way, since that conversation, there were 4 other kids who came.
Again, I'm not
radar.
saying they're registered, but,
No, but
they
they're on the
came
radar.
for packets, like whatever that means, because
showing
sometimes
up.
people get the packet and they don't even live here yet, but they're
Right.
in a
So
contract.
that number can, just go up within, a couple of days. So something to be mindful of. I think we would not be coming to you if we didn't feel confidently that this was the right recommendation to make. And certainly we feel very strongly about supporting our FLES program, which is why we met with Nora and we talked about it. Amy Kazis has worked very closely with Joe Martirana, has talked to Kristen Muller, who is in the FLES position. And so while Ms. Smith is not here, who's the person who developed the FLES program as it was articulated in an email, the FLES program does have history in the district, and there was a time when there were 2 FLES teachers at the elementary school, and both were on a cart. So this is not, something that's out of the realm of what we've considered in the past. And we did talk with Nora about what would we have to do to tweak it so that it's feasible. We're not going to get her a pair of roller skates too and say, good luck, figure out, get from room to room.
Well, you have to reduce the
We have to,
minutes.
really think about the minutes as they relate to instruction so she can get to rooms. And the great thing about traveling for FLES is that she relies a lot on the smartboard and technology, and all of our classrooms are outfitted with the technology that she does rely on. And that was actually one of the conversations we had when we were looking at this little room, was how would we incorporate the technology, because it's a small room and it was a bit cumbersome. And so she has been part of the conversation as well, Kristen, just, so you all know. It's not being made in a silo, it's not being made in some administrative way, it's really been a collaborative conversation. It's not ideal. We agree with many of the points that Nora brings up, as I know you all do, but looking at what we have, looking at rush hour, at the rush hour, little box right now, this is where we think it makes the most sense, so. But I'm happy to revisit the conversation.
Right,
And thank you to everybody for all your work on this. It sounds like a tremendous amount of work.
It is, and it's hard because, of course, we respect and everyone wants the space, and it's not an ideal situation. That's why we really, what I tell you, look, taking pieces of the library, I mean, there's a lot of different options, but all of those options are going to have a reaction from another group. So we're trying to do what we feel is the least impactful. So, again, do you want to go over the other pieces of the finance committee? Because, I mean, there was definitely a lot of important, I don't even know if we covered them all that night.
Oh, go ahead, please. Jump in. You have the agenda up there.
Do we even did we ever get beyond and to talk about the debt and things like that? Or, okay.
We did not get to that point.
Okay.
During the finance meeting, we did.
Or the taxes. We're still keeping an eye on
we didn't talk about that either.
the potential for the school district, if in fact it was legal for us to collect money as charitable donations. I've attended meetings. I kind of gave an update. I've given the board some information as I've received it, and I am attending meetings and following what's going on at the town of Greenberg, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We just want to be mindful that we don't want to do something or put something in place that could be potentially not legal for the people or lead people down a way, and they would be giving us money. In order for it to be charitable, people have to give us more money than their taxes actually are, and there's a lot of pieces to it. So I just wanted to give the board an update, which I did, and I'll continue to update you through emails and
I can also share with talking to that you talked about the charitable donations.
Yes. Yep.
And talking to my colleagues, it's not something that district level administrators are supporting. It has a lot of implications if we
just want to make sure it's legal. You know what I mean?
We don't even know if it's legal. But if it were to be legal, there are a lot of implications that would impact the district directly and the Board of Education. And so just again, based on what I'm hearing from my colleagues, just heed some caution around that, especially if it does be shown to be legal, because there are ramifications.
I mean, they could put laws. I don't mean really, it's the IRS, whether the IRS would consider it. And I think that if there's a bunch of people already getting audited for making those prepayments. The town of Greenberg said quite a few people who made the prepayments last year are under IRS audits for doing that. So.
And Maureen, I just want to say you have been relentless on this ever since the law changed, and suddenly we're all going to be out a lot more money than we were. And I don't know if everybody knows, when this all happened at Christmas time, you were on it. You were there. You were making phone calls with me, and you were awesome. And just thank you for staying on top of this, because we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars to our homeowner families. So thank you.
If it ends up being something we can do, we'll make it work. But I just wanted, because it is something
we're not going to know for a while.
We're not going to know for a while, but we are on top of it. And Tony speaks to his colleagues. I speak to mine. I went to meetings. I follow the town meetings just to make sure that we have all the current information on it. The debt and the bond, as we discussed before, I think we're looking to put off the bond vote until like the spring of 2019.
March.
And at a later meeting, we can speak about the financials and what different scenarios look like. Transportation update out of district. I don't even know what that was about now. I guess it may have just been, just about,
we have to add something.
We're just talking about the busing and what, there was some additional busing that we need to pay for. I think it'll still be within our budget, but we don't have any contingencies if there were additional students. And the last one we didn't cover, but I had made the recommendation to Tony, something we may think about wanting to do is extending our nursing hour coverages to past the end of the school day, because we do have some injuries that happen either in our middle school courtyard or at Hillside. So it may behoove us if we can figure it out with them. I mean, there'd be a slight cost to this, but we have had quite a few injuries, especially on this playground after hours, that have either the nurses have been called back, on their cell phones when they've been able to come back. And there's definitely, I think, a need even at Hillside to maybe extend it to 4 o'clock if we can make it work. That's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maureen, the kids are waiting for the buses until when?
Till they're there till like 3:30. 3:30,
Yeah.
3:40.
Yeah. I think, again, we don't want to, like, if our nurses within our current staffing, obviously they work a long day, but if, with our different nursing, if we could either stagger it or even give an additional hour of pay to someone that was willing, especially at this building, I would say that the priority would be here and then Hillside also, but only
Yes.
because of the playground and kids don't have
And it
supervision,
happens,
so it's a little bit different. So,
Okay. Any other questions on finance? All right, let's move to special ed. Tony, do you want to present on that? Because you did
Sure,
such a good
we were there.
presentation that night.
Thank you, but I didn't actually do very much.
No,
I was able to
you and Laura and
facilitate.
Tessa, it was a great job. It really was a wonderful
Thank you
job.
to the board as well for the opportunity to structure the meeting, and to SEPTA for partnering with us. And so the last meeting that we had on June 6th, which was the week before that, sorry, we went over, there were some questions that were asked by a couple of community members, and we shared information related to that. Everything from number of children who are getting, who have reading goals or writing goals, number of students who are below grade level in reading and writing, what we have around MTSS. So the questions were 10 different questions. So we went over that information, and that information is available. I think we were trying to figure out a way to share it, because it's a little bit out of context if you haven't been at any of the meetings or weren't at that last meeting. But so Laura, Tessa, and I are trying to figure out some way to share that information in a way that makes sense to people and doesn't just seem like random 10 questions came up. They were not random. They were very much connected to everything we were talking about. We then gave the audience an opportunity to ask questions related to that, whether they were follow-up questions, clarifying questions, and our administrative team was there, which is great. Our building administrators, a bunch of our teachers came out as well, who were also, some are community members, and many of our families were there, all who are here now were there. So we thank you for being there. And so we went through some questions related to that. And then Laura and Tessa gave us a brief overview of where we are in the audit. That is a document that we can share out. It's just a summary, and it's categorized by the different broad categories that we have worked under within the audit. And so we then took open questions at the end, just what other things were on people's minds. And we talked about everything from out-of-district placement to what the initiatives are at different building level, to RTI and MTSS and what's going on there. There are still questions that are existing, and I had the opportunity at least to talk to SEPTA leadership afterwards. And I'm not misrepresenting, there's still questions which are fair questions that we hope to continue to answer moving forward. And so but overall, I think it was a productive conversation, and the questions that came up were very real, very genuine from the audience, from mostly our families, parents who wanted to just know more information around the work that's happening. And I think I can say with certainty, and I think I speak for the board as well, there is a commitment to being as transparent as possible around this work. I'm not saying that we've perfected it and it's happened, spot on every time, but it's not for a lack of trying to be transparent. I think just sometimes it's a matter of figuring out, what do people want to know? How do they want to know it? How do we disseminate information? And with special education particularly, there is a confidentiality piece connected to our kids, and we're also mindful of that. So it was a productive meeting. I think we addressed a lot of the issues, and what I think most people left the room with, based on what I heard afterwards, was this was a necessary conversation that had been a long time coming, and it is one that has started, and so the trajectory is way too forward moving to not continue it moving forward. And I know that Laura and Tessa, I know that obviously you as a board are committed to that, and Laura and Tessa are committed to continuing that conversation, as are our building leaders, who have been actively engaged in discussions for months. So that's
So Tony, for those of us that weren't there, what are the follow-ups? What are the next steps? What are the expected deliverables? And
great question.
Those follow-ups, deliverables, is that for the next special education committee meeting, or is it to be in a different format?
I think the next step in this, so the next piece that we need to follow up on, aside from the ongoing conversation that has unfolded in the subcommittee, which I think is necessary to continue, but what are the specific things that are not necessarily just about this subcommittee, is the audit and our audit progress. And we've been in touch with Dr. Katzman, who's been in touch with lawyers from both sides of the settlement, and Dr. Katzman is, I don't know, going to be, my understanding is, will be in contact with both lawyers throughout the summer, and her intent, from what I understand in the most recent email that I saw, either yesterday or the day before that, to come back to the board in September. And then at the same time that that's happening, Laura and Tesfa are working on a more comprehensive summary of where the audit progress is, with timeline for anything that's not completed, right? The major projects that are still outstanding are the SOPM, and we had a really great I think it was during that meeting, we had a discussion.
Yeah.
Doug, maybe you asked a question. I feel like there was a good conversation around what we can do with the SOPM. Yeah, like really and actually Rob asked, there was a question in the audience, like almost like how can we come up with like one-page FAQs for, hey, what do you do when you have blah, 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 and these, so looking at the SOPM, not just as a cumbersome document that is weighed down by law, which the legalities of special ed, which we need to have, but also sort of the pullouts that you can take from it. And so that's something that the special ed team will be working on this summer, in addition to articulating and codifying a vision statement that is reflective of what they've heard from key stakeholders across the district. So those are two key things that I think are coming. I know are coming.
That's a great question. I was going to, anyway, thank you for asking that, Tim. I wasn't at the meeting. I just have a question about Dr. Katzman. So when she comes back,
Yes.
And when she sort of, I don't know, talks to whatever stakeholders she's going to talk to, look at whatever data she's going to look at, I imagine she's going to produce some sort of document that will be presented to the board. Will that document also be available to the public?
That is a great question, and honestly not one that I have asked yet, but one we can get the answer to. So I imagine, just based on what we've done thus far, and not that I didn't work with Dr. Katzman, during the audit process, but just subsequent to it, I do imagine that there is the expectation that it would be publicly available, right? Because there's an accountability piece to this as well. And so while I can't say definitively yes, because I don't know what her plan is, I'm pretty confident that that would be the response, just based on everything that's been shared so far. And knowing that, the board's, our district lawyers would be intimately part of that conversation as well, and our accountability, ensuring that we are doing what we need to be doing, and that would likely, I imagine, be part of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that was that last meeting, and then I can also give the diesel.
That would be great.
Update. I've been in all three of them really quick. That was a great meeting. We've been meeting all year, and what we did was we finalized guidelines for handling incidents of bias, and that was an ongoing project all year. It evolved from a protocol to guidelines, and that came over many discussions with the subcommittee that Tesfa and Jesse ran, that was comprised of parents and teachers and staff members, to discussions with our administrator, our principals, and teachers, to think about ultimately how this guideline dovetails with our code of conduct. Because what we realized over the course of the years we were developing this protocol is that it couldn't stand alone. It has to fall within the parameters that are established legally, but also our code of conduct. And so I think we did some nice work putting a document together that helps guide staff members in how to handle an incident of bias particularly. One of the things that we talked a lot about was working through case studies, which was a really powerful activity for us as an administrative team. And we had scenarios, and we talked about how would you handle it, and just to kind of see the different ways that people responded, even in a room of just 10 of us, to hear where we were on the same page and where we were not, where we were different because of developmental purposes, if you're in the high school versus the elementary school, and what Karen Hammerness, who partnered very closely, actually took the lead in many instances, and we're very, very grateful to her for that. She's from Hastings Rise. What she talked about was engaging our staff, our teachers, around some of those case studies, because it's really those day-to-day, minute-to-minute, something happens in the hallway, like what do I do now? And so giving our teachers the opportunity. I know Lou talked about how he sees that being really vital part of the work moving forward, as professional development too, by the way, not just how do we handle an incident of bias. And we charted some future agenda items. We talked about mentoring for teachers in general, but specifically teachers of color. We talked about possibly integrating affinity groups, and we left the table with the interim superintendent would be the lead on that, but if there's a gap, the three principals agreed to be the point people for the conversation moving forward. But I think it was a really productive partnership, a true community and school district partnership that led to a lot of different eyes looking at the same thing, and all those perspectives coming together to do some, important work. So
did those guidelines get rolled out to our teaching staff?
Well, no. Now the next step is we're going to vet them by our lawyers to make sure there's nothing there. So this was, and then will be integrated into the code of conduct. Sorry, and it will be rolled out to our teachers in the fall, when they come back for superintendent's conference day. So, and I don't know. I don't know if I missed anything. There was other things that might have happened that day, but.
Okay.
No, that was good. The one thing I was just going to add, because it dovetails a little bit on policy, is we did have a discussion that during this, that we actually have a policy that we don't have. We have policies that addressing harassment, student to student, teacher to student, but we don't have any policy that addresses staff to staff. So that's something that we want to look at as we go forward.
Sorry,
May not have that because I think it's in the law, but I'm not positive about that.
If you want to use those last few days before you go to check, that would be awesome. No pressure, promise.
The last thing we looked at too, I'm sorry to mention, just the state does have the DASA Act and it's Dignity for All, so we had to make sure that this also aligned to that, and so it wasn't just an independent piece. Sorry, so that's that. Thank you.
Any other questions on the diesel meeting? Okay, next, I guess, is just firming up the date for our organizational meeting.
It's
to be
listed there as
July 9th, 7:30, and I think that's good for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Board meeting dates. Did everybody get a chance to look at them?
It was attached in the.
It's got the calendar. They're basically all Mondays except when we hit, and there's 3 Tuesdays in April and May. I know Jeremy said he has an issue with Tuesdays, but with enough notice, he can hopefully be around.
They're only in May.
Those are Tuesdays that we have to have.
Yes.
Those are meetings that we have to have on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody okay with the dates otherwise? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we adopt these, or we just...
You should, well, just because Janine can't really construct the rest of the calendar with all the buildings without these dates kind of being on.
But we need to we need to do this by motion,
well, I don't know if you vote, no, but I
Just agree that they're...
Okay.
you agree that they're fine. I don't need you to vote. I just wanted
Can I just ask, has any conversation gone on with PTSA about whether they're going to continue to have their meetings, their liaison meetings on the same nights as our board meetings?
I think that conversation was going to unfold subsequent to this being firmed up.
Okay.
And I think our principals were going to potentially engage with their liaisons to figure that out. My guess would be maybe yes at this point from what I've heard, but I'm not 100% certain. And I just to go back for one moment, if I'm still here on July 9th, serving as your superintendent, I cannot be at the reorganization meeting, just so everyone knows.
There is a little history that I think Donna maybe has said before, but part of the PTSA board meeting alignment of days came because the administrators used to come to all of the board meetings.
Yes, that's the history
so
there.
it felt like it was a lot to ask them to be out 2 nights.
Yes.
But that's just something to think about in terms.
Yeah, and the flip side is that if the administrators aren't, that if board members and some want to go to liaison meetings, it makes it hard if we have to have executive sessions. Then board members end up being here till all hours because they don't happen before, they happen after.
Something to think about.
Okay, if nothing else, then, Don, I think we're going back to you for policies.
Okay, well, as I said at our last meeting, we had met, Eileen and Tony and I, right before our last board meeting, and what we basically got up here for first reads, if you want to finish them off before the end of the year, if people don't have questions, there are plenty of times that we've just done the first read and the adoption at the same time. Basically, in all of these cases, what we've done is these were policies where we were not using NYSBA's language. We were still using the Erie 1 BOCES language, which is the policy service that we used to use years ago. And in reviewing the recommended changes NYSBA was making to the policies, we decided this was the right time to just wholesale adopt their language, which makes it easier going forward. especially without me around, to compare when the next time that NYSBA does an update, if you're working off the same language, given that we were comfortable. There was one policy where NYSBA had a couple extra paragraphs that we
took out.
And
one that was not reflective of what we felt strongly about. I think it was the one about student personal expression.
Right.
We did not love all the language that NYSBA had, so we left a lot of it out, but there were just certain things that did work.
For us. And the one that's probably the biggest change is that Erie One BOCES didn't have one giant health service policy. It had a lot of little ones. And when Wendy Nadich and I were doing the entire conversion from Erie One BOCES to NYSBA, it was just too much at the time to try and turn our 7 policies into their one. But at this point, we felt comfortable doing that. So what we're recommending is that we had 5420.1, .2, .3, and so on through .7. We're going to scrap all of those and use their 5420, which actually incorporates in different sections all the things we had in the separate ones. And it'll make it much easier for my successors every time NYSBA updates this policy in the future. There really wasn't a lot of very substantive changes in these things, except that probably the biggest thing was that the law in New York State has changed in terms of what years students need to get their physicals and their immunization records, and the policy expressly stated the years that you had to in the past. So we had to update the policy to bring it into line with the changes in the law. So that was probably the biggest thing. So I don't know if anyone had any questions, and we can either just leave it as a first read and you folks can adopt it in the new year, or if you don't have any questions and you want to go ahead and adopt them now. As I said, we've done that plenty of times before. It's up to you folks.
Is there anyone who does not want to vote to adopt them now?
No, it's a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
Give me a clean slate. I would feel like I'm not leaving you guys with anything hanging.
Let's give you a clean slate. Okay. So may I have a motion to adopt the policies that are listed under
9B.
Under item 9. Donna, would you like to make a motion?
So moved, Lisa.
Thank you. And may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? And thank you again, Donna.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Just the one thing to look out for is was NYSBA's 3rd update. They do 4 a year, and so I'm assuming over the summer the 4th one will come. So when you guys pick your new members of the policy committee for next year, because the policy committee was just decimated. It was Christina, Eileen, and me. So when you pick your new members of the policy committee, you just be on the lookout from Maureen and Janine when NYSBA sends the next update. And so basically your first order of business will just be to compare what they're recommending with what we already have and see whether or not we need to incorporate their changes.
Okay. So that brings us up to second public comment.
Hi, Mia Johnson. I have 3 quick points. I'm curious how Christina Mitchell's position will be filled. I think that the board should consider opening this up to the community and allow people to put themselves forward. I'm not going to be one of those people. I just think it's important that the community have a say. I think the board should be transparent regarding the vacancy and how it's going to be filled. Going back to the extra class space at kindergarten, this strikes me as something that parents would be very interested in hearing about and understanding both sides, especially if the board decides to act against the recommendation of the superintendent, the treasurer, and other stakeholders. And then thirdly, I'd like to ask that the board or the district be transparent about Dr. Katzman's return, what the process is and what the end result is. Last time, for example, Laura Sullivan emailed, a district blast went out with her contact information so parents could reach out individually. So I just would like to ask that be as transparent as well. Thank you.
And Mia, I'm just going to respond just to the first question. And what is the process on finding Christina's successor? And the answer is that We have not discussed it yet as a board, but it will be a discussion that takes place at an open meeting because of the open meeting laws. So it will be on an agenda, in the near future. So just wanted to let you know that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
I'm trying to rush, I'm sorry.
You don't have to run down. It's okay.
Well, I know, right? Rob McQueen, live in Hastings. I think, Maureen, you talked about that there might be a bond about the expansion of the physical plant at Hillside coming up, or maybe that's just
I mean,
wishful.
it's just one of the many, many
Okay.
items that was
I
discussed.
just wonder, and I know sometimes
Nothing to do with that.
educators
Yeah.
think this is a negative, but I personally experienced it in my childhood when I was going to school, but portable classrooms is that something we're looking at and thinking about? Because that's 50 grand and it's pretty easy to get them in.
Well,
Right.
part of our issue, I would say that would be a consideration, but in New York state law, you do have to go through a process even to get the classrooms here. And I guess part of the issue would be where would they be located? Would they be in the parking lot, which we already were talking about, and expand? So I think we all kind of know, that would be considered, absolutely, as part of the
Way to keep us
discussion.
at 18.
But I just don't know where they would be located, because would we put them in the fields? Would we put them on the back playground? I think there's other concerns that parents might have. And then who would go into the portable classroom? So,
Yeah.
but again, not to say we're doing an extension I hope other people will come to those meetings. They've been great, that we're kind of discussing every different possibility. But that was just one of the things that had come up about because of some of the space concerns that had come up, just as if you had to, if we continue to see enrollment increases.
Yeah,
So
especially
that's
if,
all.
like you say, at first grade and
Yeah.
all of a sudden
Yeah.
we've got 7 sections
Right,
and,
right.
in 3 grades, we're in trouble.
Right, exactly.
It's a great point.
Okay.
Okay, so now I think, so
Yes.
we had started with an executive session. We
Lisa,
didn't finish?
can I just, because the other comments, board comments, can I
Well,
make?
think you want to-
No, but we're going to do those. Do you want to do them?
I would kind of like to do one now.
Okay.
Which is just that, Jody and you were thanking Christina and me and Eileen, and I would like to also thank Tony. I would. Don't look at me like that, Tony. We've really had a wonderful year with you here, and we appreciate all your hard work all year long. We're incredibly sorry, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm incredibly sorry that Hastings is losing you. I'll just think it's because you couldn't survive without me, so.
Discuss policy. No.
Exactly. But it's really, I've worked with, you are my 4th superintendent I've worked with, and there have been wonderful things about all of them. You have really been a star as far as I'm concerned, and we will miss you, and we wish you well in all your endeavors going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. And I thank you all. For the
Thank you,
opportunity.
Donna. I wasn't thinking this was going to be your last board meeting.
I don't know that it is. I'm not
Right.
saying that it is,
I
but
know.
it may.
Well, it's my last
your
one
last
with
one,
him,
that's right.
so it's my last chance to say something. So, and because Jody had me so choked up before, I could hardly say thank you to all the rest of you. But it has been a pleasure serving with all of you, and with Lindsay and Gab and Wendy and Karen and Eric Sweeting and all the board members that taught me everything I knew about being on a board, as well with all the administrators, teachers, custodial and clerical staffs in all the buildings. It's been wonderful. So thank you all. Thank you for this. I will think of you whenever.
So now I may need another motion. We're going to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss contracts. Motion?
So moved.
And a second? Second. All in favor?
You need that.